The morning alarm echoed through the sleeping quarters of Harmony 7, a massive space station that floated between 3 star systems. Alex rubbed his eyes and sat up in his narrow bed, looking around at his roommates from different worlds. There was Brix, a small blue creature with too many arms, and Torvin, who looked like a walking tree trunk with glowing spots. They had all been living together for 6 months now at the Galactic Species Integration Academy. Alex was the only human in his class. Most of the other species thought humans were boring and weak. They had no claws, no thick skin, no poison, and no natural weapons. Even their teeth were flat and useless for fighting. But Alex didn't mind. He found the other species fascinating, especially the dangerous ones. The most dangerous student at the academy was Riven. Riven belonged to a species called the Thrakari, and everyone was scared of him. He stood 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. His hands ended in claws that could cut through metal, and his yellow eyes could see in complete darkness. The Thrakari were known across the galaxy as perfect killing machines. They hunted other species for sport until the Galactic Council forced them to stop. Riven wore a special collar around his neck that sent signals to his brain. The collar made him feel calm and sleepy, stopping his natural urge to hunt and kill. Without it, a young Thrakari like Riven would attack anything that moved. The Academy's doctors said the collar was completely safe and had never failed before. Alex walked to the dining hall with his roommates for breakfast. The hall was huge, with tables designed for creatures of all shapes and sizes. Some students needed special chairs, others ate while hanging from the ceiling, and a few absorbed their food through their skin. Alex grabbed a tray of human food and sat at his usual table near the window that showed the stars outside. Riven sat alone at a table in the corner, as always. The other students gave him plenty of space, whispering nervously when they walked past him. Even with the collar, Riven looked like he could tear someone apart without trying. His yellow eyes followed every movement in the room, and his head turned toward any sudden sound. Alex had tried to talk to Riven before, but the Thrakari barely responded. The collar made it hard for Riven to think clearly or hold conversations. He moved slowly and seemed confused most of the time. Alex felt sorry for him. It must be terrible to have your own mind controlled by a machine. After breakfast, all the students walked to their first class of the day. Professor Zine, a floating jellyfish creature, taught xenobiology in a large classroom filled with specimen, tanks, and holographic displays. Alex took his usual seat in the middle of the room while Riven sat in the back corner, far from everyone else. Professor Zane began the lesson by showing 3-dimensional images of different alien digestive systems. The images rotated slowly in the air while he explained how each species processed food differently. Alex found it interesting, but many of the other students looked bored or confused. Halfway through the class, the lights in the room flickered. Professor Zane paused his lecture and looked around with concern. The holographic displays buzzed and sparked, then disappeared completely. A low humming sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. Suddenly, there was a bright flash and a loud pop from the back of the room. Alex turned around and saw smoke rising from Riven's collar. The device that controlled the Thrakari's mind had stopped working. Sparks fell from the broken collar onto Riven's desk. For a moment, everything was quiet. Riven sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead. Then his yellow eyes began to change. The sleepy, confused look disappeared, replaced by something sharp and focused. His pupils grew smaller, like a cat focusing on prey. His breathing became deeper and more controlled. Riven stood up slowly from his chair. Without the collar's influence, he seemed to grow even taller and more frightening. His muscles tensed under his scales and his claws extended from his fingertips with a soft clicking sound. He turned his head from side to side, studying every student in the room like he was choosing his first target. Professor Zane pressed an emergency button on his desk. Red lights began flashing throughout the classroom and an alarm started wailing. The professor's voice shook as he spoke into his communicator, calling for immediate security assistance. The other students panicked. Chairs fell over as creatures of all shapes and sizes rushed toward the exits. Screams echoed off the walls as everyone tried to escape at once. Some students got trampled in the chaos, while others used their natural abilities to climb walls or fly toward the ceiling. But Riven didn't attack anyone yet. He stood in the back of the room, completely still except for his eyes. Those yellow eyes tracked every movement, following the fleeing students like a predator watching a herd of animals. He was studying them, learning their patterns, deciding which one would be the easiest to catch. Alex remained in his seat while chaos erupted around him. He watched Riven carefully, trying to understand what was happening inside the Thrakari's mind. The creature's body language had completely changed. Gone was the slow, drugged movement from the collar's influence. Now Riven moved with deadly grace, every gesture precise and purposeful. Security officers rushed into the classroom, wearing heavy armor and carrying energy weapons. They formed a circle around Riven, shouting orders for him to surrender. But the Thrakari ignored them completely. Instead, he walked toward the nearest exit with smooth, confident steps. The security officers fired their stun weapons, but the energy beams bounced off Riven's scales without any effect. The Thrakari moved faster than anyone expected, dodging between the officers and slipping through the doorway before they could stop him. Within minutes, Riven had disappeared into the maze of corridors that made up Harmony 7. The Academy's AI computer system tracked his movement through security cameras, but the Thrakari seemed to know exactly where each camera was located. He moved through blind spots and maintenance tunnels like he had been planning this escape for months. Alex finally left the classroom and joined the stream of students heading toward the emergency shelters. But instead of feeling scared like everyone else, he felt curious. There was something about Riven's behavior that didn't match what the professors had taught them about Thrakari hunting patterns. The creature could have killed dozens of students in the classroom, but he chose to leave instead. Why would a predator pass up such easy prey? Emergency lights bathed the corridors of Harmony 7 in pulsing red as security teams spread throughout the station. Commander Torres stood in the main control room, watching dozens of screens that showed different parts of the Academy. Officers moved through the hallways in groups of 4, armed with every weapon that might work against a Thrakari. None of them had ever faced a situation like this before. Riven appeared on camera feeds for only seconds at a time, before vanishing into ventilation shafts or service tunnels. The station's AI tried to predict his movements, but the Thrakari seemed to understand the layout better than the computer systems. He moved like liquid shadow through areas that should have been impossible to reach. The Academy's head of security, Director Walsh, paced behind Commander Torres with sweat on his forehead. He had overseen the integration program for 5 years without a single serious incident. Now his worst nightmare was hunting through the station, and every passing minute increased the chance of casualties. In the lower levels of the Academy, Riven paused in a maintenance shaft and tilted his head to listen. His enhanced hearing picked up heartbeats from the floors above, each one beating with fear and panic. The scent of terror drifted through the air vents, making his predatory instincts even stronger. Every part of his body was designed for hunting, and the broken collar had released all those suppressed urges at once. But Riven wasn't attacking randomly. His species had survived for millions of years by being smart predators, not mindless killers. He was learning the station's layout, studying the security patterns and identifying the weakest targets. The panicked students running through the corridors were too easy. A true hunt required challenge and strategy. 3 floors above, Alex walked through the Academy library with 5 other students who had gotten separated from the main group, heading to the emergency shelters. The library was one of the largest rooms on the station, filled with information crystals from hundreds of worlds and reading pods designed for different species. Beth, a nervous girl from a peaceful farming world, kept looking over her shoulder. Her people had never evolved any fighting instincts, and she jumped at every shadow. Coda, a reptilian student with natural camouflage abilities, tried to blend into the walls but kept flickering in and out of visibility due to his fear. The other students wanted to run toward the emergency shelters, but Alex convinced them to stay in the library. The main corridors were too dangerous, and the library had multiple exits if they needed to escape quickly. More importantly, Alex had noticed something strange about the security camera feeds before they lost access to the monitors. Alex had been watching Riven's movement patterns, and the Thrakari wasn't moving randomly. He was following a specific path through the station, almost like he was looking for something particular. Most predators would have attacked the first group of prey they found, but Riven had passed by several opportunities to hunt. The library's lights dimmed as power was diverted to security systems throughout the station. Long shadows stretched between the tall shelves of information crystals, creating perfect hiding spots for something that hunted in darkness. The students huddled together near the main desk, whispering nervously about whether they should try to reach the shelters. Commander Torres received reports from her security teams every few minutes. Team Alpha had found claw marks in a ventilation shaft. Team Beta discovered a service panel that had been carefully removed, not torn open. Team Gamma reported strange scratches on walls that seemed to form a pattern, almost like the Thrakari was leaving a trail. The station's AI calculated probability matrices and threat assessments, but every projection showed the same result. A loose Thrakari represented an extreme danger to every living creature on the station. The computer recommended evacuating all non-essential personnel and flooding certain sections with knockout gas. Director Walsh refused to authorize the gas. Too many students were scattered throughout those sections, and the gas that would merely slow down a Thrakari could kill smaller species. He had to find another solution, but none of his training had prepared him for hunting an apex predator. Through a space station. Riven dropped down from an overhead shaft into a corridor lined with student dormitories. He could smell the fear coming from behind locked doors as students hid in their rooms. His claws left small scratches in the metal walls as he walked, not from carelessness, but from excitement. The hunt was finally beginning. But instead of breaking down doors and attacking the hiding students, Riven continued down the corridor toward a specific destination. His enhanced senses had detected something more interesting than terrified prey. Somewhere in this station was a scent that didn't match the others, a presence that wasn't running in panic like everything else. In the library, Alex stood near one of the large windows that looked out into space. The other students sat behind, reading desks, trying to make themselves as small as possible. Alex studied his own reflection in the window, thinking about what he knew of Thrakari hunting behavior from his xenobiology classes. Thrakari were pack hunters on their home world, but young ones often hunted alone to prove themselves. They preferred prey that fought back because it made the hunt more satisfying. They also had complex social hierarchies based on dominance displays and challenges between equals. Beth grabbed Alex's arm as a new sound echoed through the library. Heavy footsteps moved slowly down the corridor outside, accompanied by the soft scraping of claws against metal. The other students held their breath as the footsteps stopped directly outside the library's main entrance. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, and Riven stepped into the library. He looked even more terrifying in the dim lighting, his yellow eyes glowing as they adjusted to the darkness. His scales caught the light from the emergency strips, making him look like a creature made of liquid metal. The students behind the desks tried to make themselves invisible, but Riven's senses were too sharp. He could hear their rapid heartbeats, smell their fear, and see their heat signatures even in the shadows. But his attention focused on Alex, who stood calmly by the window without trying to hide. Alex turned around to face Riven directly. While the other students trembled with terror, Alex felt something different. His heart rate increased, but not from fear. Every instinct in his body was telling him to study this predator, to understand its behavior and motivations. He had never felt more awake and aware in his entire life. Riven tilted his head as he looked at Alex. The human wasn't running or hiding like proper prey should. Instead, the young human was watching him with calm, calculating eyes. This was unexpected and interesting. In all his time at the academy, no other student had ever looked at him without fear. The Thrakari took a step closer, his claws clicking against the library floor. Alex didn't move or look away. The two of them stared at each other across the silent library while the other students watched in horror, certain they were about to witness their classmate being torn apart by the galaxy's most dangerous predator. The silence in the library stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Riven stood perfectly still near the entrance, his massive frame blocking the only way out. His yellow eyes remained locked on Alex, studying the human with the intense focus of a predator evaluating potential prey. The other students had stopped breathing entirely, Afraid that even the smallest sound might trigger an attack, Alex felt his classmates' terror like a physical weight in the air. But something inside him remained strangely calm. His mind worked quickly, processing everything he knew about Thrakari behavior and social structure. These creatures respected strength and dominance above all else. They attacked prey that ran and submitted to predators that stood their ground. Taking a slow step forward, Alex kept his eyes fixed on Riven's face. The movement was deliberate and controlled, showing no fear or hesitation. Behind him, he heard Beth make a small whimpering sound, but he couldn't afford to look back. Breaking eye contact now would signal weakness, and weakness meant death. When facing a Thrakari, Riven's head tilted slightly as Alex moved closer. This was not normal prey behavior. Every other creature on the station had run from him, hidden from him, or tried to fight him with weapons and groups. But this small human was walking toward him alone, meeting his gaze without flinching. The Thrakari's nostrils flared as he tested Alex's scent for signs of fear. He found elevated stress hormones, increased heart rate, and heightened alertness, but not the sharp panic that marked prey animals. Instead, Alex smelled focused and determined. Like a hunter preparing for a challenge, Alex took another step forward, bringing himself within striking distance of those deadly claws. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but steady. He didn't try to reason with Riven's intelligence or appeal to his civilized side. Instead, he addressed the predator directly. "You're not hunting randomly," Alex said, his eyes never leaving Riven's face. "You passed up easy targets. You're looking for something specific." Riven's pupils contracted slightly. The human had recognized his hunting pattern, something even the security officers had missed. This small creature understood predator behavior in a way that surprised him. "You want a real challenge," Alex continued, taking one more careful step forward. "Something worth your time, something that won't just run and hide." The other students watched in frozen horror as Alex moved closer to the 8-foot killing machine. They wanted to scream at him to run, to hide, to do anything except walk toward certain death. But something about Alex's confident movement kept them silent. In the control room, Commander Torres spotted the confrontation on the library's security cameras. She called for her closest team to move toward the library immediately, but they were still 3 corridors away. She watched helplessly as the human student seemed to commit suicide by approaching the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Alex could see details of Riven's scales now, each one perfectly designed for protection and intimidation. The Thrakari's claws were extended but not raised to strike. His posture showed readiness for combat but not immediate aggression. It was the stance of a predator evaluating a potential rival, not stalking prey. "I'm not afraid of you," Alex said, and he realized it was true. Fear would have made him run or freeze. Instead, he felt energized and alert, like every sense was working at maximum capacity. "But I'm not challenging you either. I'm just standing here, meeting your eyes, showing you that not everything on this station is prey." Riven took a half step backward, his head drawing back in surprise. In his species, direct eye contact was either a challenge to fight or a submission display. But Alex was doing neither. The human was simply acknowledging him as an equal, something no other species had ever done. The Thrakari's breathing slowed slightly as some of his aggressive tension faded. His claws retracted partially, no longer prepared for an immediate strike. This strange human was triggering responses in his brain that he didn't fully understand. Alex noticed the change and pressed his advantage carefully. "You're intelligent. You're more than just instincts and hunting drives. The collar made you seem slow and confused, but without it, you're thinking clearly again." Security officers appeared at the library entrance behind Riven, their weapons raised and ready to fire. Commander Torres spoke through their communicators, ordering them to wait for a clear shot that wouldn't endanger the human student. But Alex was standing directly in their line of fire, making any attack impossible. "Don't move suddenly," Alex said, though it wasn't clear if he was talking to Riven or the security team. "Everyone stay calm. This doesn't have to end with violence." Riven heard the security officers behind him but didn't turn around. His attention remained focused on Alex, studying this unprecedented situation. No prey had ever spoken to him like an equal. No other student had ever shown him respect instead of fear. Alex extended his hand slowly, palm facing down in a gesture that wasn't quite submission, but wasn't dominance either. It was the movement of someone offering partnership, cooperation between equals. His heart hammered in his chest, but his hand remained steady. "Let me help you," Alex said. "The collar is broken, but I might be able to reset it manually. You don't want to spend your life as a prisoner on this station, and the others don't deserve to die because of a mechanical failure." For several long seconds, Riven stared at Alex's extended hand. Every instinct told him to strike, to establish dominance, to prove his superiority over this smaller creature. But something deeper, some part of his mind that remembered pack cooperation and mutual respect, recognized Alex as something other than prey or threat. Slowly, carefully, Riven lowered his head until Alex could reach the broken collar around his neck. The device was hot from the electrical damage, with several burnt components visible through cracked housing. Alex's fingers worked quickly but gently, finding the manual reset switch hidden behind a protective panel. The security officers watched in amazement as the most dangerous predator in known space allowed a human teenager to touch his throat, the most vulnerable part of his body. Commander Torres held her breath as Alex's fingers found the reset mechanism. There was a soft beep and the collar's lights flickered back to life. Immediately, Riven's posture began to change. The sharp alertness faded from his eyes, replaced by the drugged confusion that everyone was used to seeing. His muscles relaxed and his claws retracted completely. But just before the collar's influence took full effect, Riven looked directly into Alex's eyes one more time. In that brief moment, Alex saw recognition there, and something that might have been gratitude. The Thrakari gave an almost imperceptible nod before the collar's chemicals clouded his mind again. Alex stepped back as Riven swayed slightly, the artificial calm washing over him. The crisis was over, but Alex knew that something fundamental had changed. He had looked into the eyes of a true predator and found intelligence, dignity, and even honor there. And somehow, impossibly, that predator had chosen to trust him. 3 days after the incident, Alex sat in a sterile white room facing a panel of the galaxy's leading experts on interspecies psychology. Dr. Luna Park led the questioning, her fingers dancing over a holographic display that showed Alex's biological responses in real time: heart rate, brain activity, stress hormones, and dozens of other measurements painted a picture of someone who remained remarkably calm under pressure. The panel included representatives from 12 different species, each trying to understand how a human teenager had succeeded where trained professionals had failed. Dr. Thane, a tall gray creature with 4 arms and crystal-like eyes, leaned forward in his specially designed chair. "Walk us through your thought process again," Dr. Thane requested. "When you saw Riven in the library, what made you decide to approach him instead of running?" Alex had answered this question several times already, but he tried to explain once. "I watched his movement patterns on the security feeds before we lost access. He wasn't hunting randomly. He passed by several groups of students who would have been easy targets. It seemed like he was looking for something specific." Dr. Park made notes on her display. Human behavior during crisis situations had been studied for decades, but Alex's responses didn't match any known psychological profiles. Most humans would have experienced fight-or-flight responses when facing a Thrakari. Alex had shown elevated alertness, but no panic or terror. "But why didn't you feel afraid?" asked Dr. Voss, a floating creature that communicated through color changes on its translucent skin. "Every other species shows instinctive fear responses to Thrakari predator displays. Even other predator species avoid confronting them directly." Alex thought carefully before answering. "I did feel something, but it wasn't exactly fear. It was more like intense focus, like my mind was working faster and seeing more details than normal. I felt energized, not scared." The panel exchanged glances that Alex couldn't interpret. Dr. Park touched her display, pulling up comparative data from other species' responses to predator encounters. The human readings were unlike anything in their databases. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Riven sat in his usual corner of the dining hall, moving slowly under the influence of his repaired collar. But his yellow eyes tracked Alex's movements when the human entered the room. There was something different in that gaze now, a recognition that hadn't been there before the incident. Director Walsh had submitted his report to the Galactic Council, but their response had been swift and concerning. Instead of praising the peaceful resolution, they demanded a full investigation into human psychological capabilities. Several species had expressed alarm at Alex's ability to control a Thrakari predator. Back in the examination room, Dr. Park pulled up Alex's complete psychological profile. Your brain activity during the confrontation showed patterns we've never seen before, she explained. Instead of fear responses, you showed heightened pattern recognition, improved reaction times, and enhanced sensory processing. What does that mean? Alex asked. Dr. Thane manipulated his own display, showing comparative brain scans from different species during predator encounters. Most species have evolved specific responses to danger: flight, camouflage, defensive displays, or group cooperation. But humans seem to have evolved something different. The displays showed brain activity patterns from the incident. While other students had shown classical fear responses, Alex's brain had activated regions associated with hunting, strategy, and dominance assessment. His neural activity looked more like a predator evaluating prey than the reverse. Dr. Voss changed colors rapidly, indicating excitement or concern. We've been studying the recordings of your interaction with Riven. Your body language, vocal patterns, and movement style triggered specific responses in the Thrakari. You were unconsciously displaying behavior that his species recognizes as dominant predator signals. Alex frowned. But I'm not a predator. Humans are omnivores. We evolved from creatures that ate mostly plants and small animals. Dr. Park shared a look with her colleagues before continuing. That's not entirely accurate. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that human ancestors were persistence hunters who could track large prey across vast distances. Your species developed cooperative hunting strategies that made you extremely effective predators. The revelation hit Alex like cold water. He had always thought of humans as peaceful, civilized creatures who had moved beyond their primitive instincts. The idea that he might have predator programming hidden in his brain was disturbing. More importantly, Dr. Thane added, humans evolved in social groups where complex hierarchies required sophisticated psychological manipulation. Your species became experts at reading intentions, predicting behavior, and establishing dominance through psychological rather than physical means. The panel showed Alex recordings of his confrontation with Riven, slowed down and analyzed frame by frame. His posture, eye contact, vocal tone, and movement patterns all displayed what they called apex predator confidence. He had unconsciously projected dominance signals that Riven's instincts had recognized and respected. The Thrakari are powerful but simple predators, Dr. Voss explained through shifting colors. They rely on strength, speed, and natural weapons. But humans are sophisticated predators who use intelligence, cooperation, and psychological warfare. To Riven, you represented something higher in the food chain. Alex studied the data displays showing his own biological responses. The evidence was undeniable. When confronted with a deadly predator, his body hadn't prepared to run or hide. It had prepared to establish dominance and control the situation. This changes everything we thought we knew about human psychology, Dr. Park said. Your species has been presenting yourselves as peaceful herbivores, but the incident with Riven suggests that you're actually apex predators who simply choose not to hunt. The implications were staggering. Humans had been accepted into the galactic community partly because other species saw them as harmless. If humans were actually sophisticated predators, it would require a complete reevaluation of interspecies relationships. Dr. Thane pulled up population data for human colonies throughout the galaxy. Humans have been remarkably successful at establishing cooperative relationships with other species. We assumed this was because you were naturally peaceful. But what if it's because you're such effective predators that you can afford to be generous? Alex felt uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Just because I didn't run from Riven doesn't mean all humans are secret predators. Maybe I'm just unusual. But the evidence suggested otherwise. As the panel reviewed more data, patterns emerged that had been overlooked before. Humans consistently took leadership roles in mixed species groups. Other species deferred to human judgment in crisis situations. Even aggressive species like the Thrakari showed unusual respect for human authority figures. We need to expand this study, Dr. Park concluded. We need to test other humans in controlled situations to see if Alex's responses are typical or exceptional. The session ended with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. The incident in the library had revealed something about human nature that even humans themselves hadn't understood. Alex left the examination room wondering if everything he thought he knew about his own species was wrong. That evening, as Alex walked through the academy corridors, he noticed something different in how the other students looked at him. Word of his confrontation with Riven had spread, and the mixture of awe and fear in their expressions was unmistakable. They saw him differently now, and Alex wasn't sure if he liked the change. 6 months had passed since the collar malfunction that changed everything. Alex stood in front of his first class as the Galactic Species Integration Academy's newest instructor, looking out at a room full of young faces from dozens of different worlds. The title on his door read, Human Behavioral Specialist, a position that hadn't existed before the incident with Riven. The classroom had been redesigned to accommodate his unique teaching methods. Instead of traditional desks, students sat in a circle that allowed everyone to see each other clearly. Alex had learned that understanding behavior required observing body language, facial expressions, and social interactions between different species. Among his students was a young Thrakari named Kess, whose collar had been modified based on Alex's recommendations. Instead of complete suppression of predatory instincts, the new design allowed controlled access to natural behaviors while preventing dangerous aggression. Kess looked more alert and intelligent than previous Thrakari students. Though still safely restrained, Alex began the lesson by walking slowly around the circle, making eye contact with each student. This simple action demonstrated principles he had discovered about human psychology. Direct eye contact established connection and respect without aggression, something that few other species could accomplish naturally. Today we're going to talk about predator psychology, Alex announced. Not just the obvious predators like Kess here, but the hidden predators that exist in every species, including humans. The revelation that humans were apex predators had sent shockwaves through the galactic community 6 months ago. Some species had demanded that humans be reclassified as a potential threat. Others had requested human advisors for their own military and security forces. The debate was still ongoing in the Galactic Council. Beth, now in her final year at the Academy, raised her hand nervously. She had been in the library during the original incident and still sometimes looked at Alex with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. But humans don't act like predators, Beth said. You're peaceful and helpful. You don't hurt other species or try to dominate them. Alex smiled, remembering when he had believed the same thing. That's exactly what makes humans such effective predators. We've evolved beyond the need for physical violence. We achieve dominance through cooperation, intelligence, and psychological influence. He gestured toward Kess, whose yellow eyes tracked the movement with predatory precision. Kess hunts with claws and strength, but humans hunt with words, ideas, and social manipulation. We convince our prey to cooperate with their own capture. The statement sent uncomfortable ripples through the classroom. Several students shifted nervously, suddenly aware that their human teacher might be demonstrating predatory behavior right now by controlling their attention and thoughts. Don't be afraid, Alex continued. Human predatory instincts are usually directed toward protecting others, not harming them. We hunt problems, not people. We stalk solutions and capture opportunities. Through the classroom window, Alex could see Riven crossing the courtyard outside. The Thrakari had graduated from the academy and now worked as a security officer on the station. His collar had been replaced with the same modified design that Kess wore, allowing him to use his natural abilities for protection rather than hunting. The relationship between Alex and Riven had developed into something unique in galactic history. They worked together regularly, with Alex providing psychological insights and Riven offering security expertise. Other species marveled at the partnership between two apex predators who had chosen cooperation over competition. The key to understanding any species, Alex explained to his students, is recognizing what they evolved to hunt. Herbivores evolved to find and process plants. Simple predators evolved to catch and kill specific prey, but humans evolved to hunt the most dangerous prey of all, other intelligent beings. The classroom fell silent as the implications sank in. Alex had learned to deliver uncomfortable truths in ways that didn't trigger panic, another example of sophisticated predatory psychology at work. A small reptilian student named Tav raised a clawed hand. If humans are such dangerous predators, why do you help other species instead of conquering them? Alex nodded approvingly at the question. Because true apex predators don't need to prove their dominance through violence. When you're at the top of the food chain, you can afford to be generous. Humans help other species because we're secure enough in our own power to lift others up instead of holding them down. The lesson continued with practical exercises in reading body language and recognizing predatory behaviors across different species. Alex had developed training methods that helped students understand their own psychological strengths and weaknesses. After class, Alex walked to his office and found Director Walsh waiting for him. The Academy's head of security looked older and more tired than he had 6 months ago, but also more confident in his ability to handle unusual situations. The Galactic Council has made their decision, Walsh announced. They're officially recognizing humans as a Category 5 species. Category 5 was the highest classification in galactic taxonomy, reserved for species capable of interstellar warfare and planetary colonization. Only 3 other species had achieved that status, and none of them were considered as psychologically sophisticated as humans. What does that mean for the Academy? Alex asked. Walsh smiled for the first time in months. It means we're expanding. The Council wants human advisors at every major educational and military facility in the galaxy. They're calling it the Human Integration Protocol. Alex looked out his office window at the students moving between buildings, representatives from hundreds of species learning to understand each other and work together peacefully. The incident that had started as a dangerous malfunction had become the foundation for a new era of interspecies cooperation. There's one more thing, Walsh added. Riven specifically requested to work with you on the new program. He says humans and Thrakari make an effective team because you both understand the psychology of apex predators. That evening, Alex met Riven in the station's observation deck, where large windows provided a view of the surrounding star systems. The Thrakari's modified collar allowed him to hold conversations that would have been impossible under the old suppression system. I remember everything from that day in the library, Riven said, his voice deeper and clearer than it had been under the old collar's influence. When the device failed, my mind became sharp again for the first time in months. I could think clearly, plan strategically, hunt properly. Alex nodded, understanding the significance of that admission. But you didn't hunt. You could have killed dozens of students, but you chose not to. Because I was looking for something more interesting than prey, Riven replied. My species values worthy opponents over easy kills. I sensed something different about you from the beginning, even through the collar's fog. When I found you in the library, you proved that my instincts were correct. The two of them stood in comfortable silence, watching ships move between the stars. Their partnership had become a model for other predator species integration programs throughout the galaxy. The combination of human psychological insight and Thrakari physical capabilities created a security team that could handle situations no single species could manage alone. The other species still don't fully understand what happened that day, Alex observed. They think you submitted to me because humans are somehow superior predators. Riven's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. They're wrong, aren't they? You didn't dominate me. You recognized me as an equal and offered partnership instead of conquest. That's why I chose to trust you. Alex thought about the months of research and testing that had followed the incident. The galaxy's leading scientists had dissected every aspect of human psychology, trying to understand what made his species so effective at interspecies cooperation. They had discovered sophisticated hunting instincts, advanced social manipulation, abilities and psychological warfare capabilities that rivaled any known species. But they had missed the most important point. Humans didn't use their predatory abilities to destroy other species. They used them to understand, protect, and elevate others. That was what made them truly dangerous and truly valuable as allies. "The new students are different," Alex said, gesturing toward the academy buildings below. "They're not just learning facts about each other's biology and culture. They're learning to recognize the predator and prey dynamics that exist in every social interaction." Riven tilted his head, studying Alex with those sharp yellow eyes. "And they're learning that the most successful predators are those who choose their targets carefully. Humans hunt ignorance, fear, and conflict instead of hunting people." A soft chime indicated that the evening meal period was beginning. Students from dozens of species would soon gather in the dining halls, sitting together in mixed groups that would have been impossible before Alex's teaching methods helped them understand each other's psychological needs. "I have a confession," Alex said as they prepared to leave the observation deck. "When I walked toward you in the library, I wasn't being brave or heroic. I was following instincts I didn't even know I had. My brain was analyzing your behavior, patterns, and calculating the best way to establish dominance without triggering a fight." Riven made a sound that might have been laughter. "I know. That's what made it so effective. You weren't pretending to be an apex predator. You were being one. My species recognizes authentic dominance displays, not performances." They walked together toward the dining halls, an unlikely partnership that had changed the course of galactic history. Behind them, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small dramas of organic life. But on Harmony 7, a new chapter in interspecies relations was being written by students who understood that the greatest predators were those who chose to protect instead of destroy. In the dining hall, Alex took his usual seat at a table that included students from 8 different species. Conversations flowed naturally between creatures who had once feared each other, now united by a shared understanding of their own psychological strengths and limitations. As he looked around the room, Alex reflected on the journey that had brought him here. 6 months ago, he had been just another human student trying to fit into a galaxy that saw his species as harmless and unremarkable. Now he was helping to reshape how all species understood themselves and each other. The incident with Riven had revealed a truth that even humans hadn't fully grasped. They were apex predators who had chosen to use their hunting instincts in service of others. They stalked knowledge instead of prey, hunted solutions instead of victims, and captured hearts and minds instead of territory. In a galaxy full of creatures driven by simple instincts, humans alone possessed the predatory wisdom to know when not to strike. And sometimes, Alex thought as he watched his diverse group of students laughing together, the greatest strength was knowing when to extend a helping hand instead of a clenched fist. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and opportunities that would require all species working together. But Alex was confident they could meet whatever came next. After all, the galaxy's most effective predators were now dedicated to hunting for peace,